I'm in Mawnan, a small village located close to the town of Falmouth in southern Cornwall. Mawnan is a quiet, beautiful place, well known for its picturesque views, its lovely scenic coastal walks and its fantastic views of the sea. There really isn't anything menacing about this place. The people here are lovely, it's a nice place to visit. But the name Mawnan has become synonymous with a bizarre, terrifying entity that is as chilling today as it was when first reported 30 years ago. My name is Dr. Darren Naish, and I'm going to be investigating the story of the Owl Man of Mawnan. Welcome back. My name is Dr. Darren Naish. I'm going to be investigating the mystery of the Owl Man of Mawnan, a weird birdman-like entity which has been known to investigators ever since it was first reported in 1976. During my investigation, I'm going to be talking to noted author and investigator Jonathan Downes, and also to the scientist and skeptic Dr. David Martill. I'm going to begin my investigation by taking a walk down to Mawnan Parish Church and Mawnan Woods, the place where the very first sightings were made in 1976. So what do we know about this creature? Well, our story begins in April 1976, when two young girls, June and Vicky Melling, aged variously 12 and 9 years old, were on holiday here with their parents. They were enjoying the fine spring scenery and sunny weather when, so we're told, the two girls were terrified by a feathered birdman monster that they saw hovering above the tower of the old church. Now, we have quite a good idea of the appearance of this creature thanks to a sketch that the two girls produced. They were reportedly so terrified by this apparition that the family cut short their holiday by 3 days. Now, this was merely the first among many reports of a strange apparition that soon became known as the Owl Man of Mawnan. It's at this exact spot, just next to this sty and just a few tens of metres away from Mawnan Parish Church, that the second set of sightings occurred. Two 14-year-old girls, Sally Chapman and Barbara Perry, were camping here in the July of 1976. At about 9 o'clock one evening, they heard a strange hissing noise in the trees. They looked up and they saw the same strange birdman monster that had been seen here just a few months earlier. And they also produced very good sketches, giving us some idea of what they saw. So as you can see, the Owlman is meant to be about 5 foot tall. It's a feathered creature with bird-like wings. It has claws on its wings, long legs and black pincers for feet. It has a really strange cone-shaped head, ear-like projections, glowing red eyes and a black upturned mouth. One of the most interesting things about the Owl Man phenomenon is that virtually all of the reported sightings have happened within just a few hundred metres of each other. I'm now taking a short walk down to Mawnan Woods, and this is the location where virtually all of the remaining sightings have occurred. Compared to such legendary monsters as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, you might assume that Owlman is mightily obscure and very poorly known. But in fact, it's been the subject of several detailed studies and a huge amount has been written about it. Opinions on the Owlman have varied a great deal. But the biggest question is perhaps, does Owlman really exist? Well, that's what I'm here to find out. So by now we've got some idea of what the Owlman is meant to look like. We've also looked at the history behind the various claimed sightings. But in order to go that little bit deeper, I want to talk to someone who knows more about the subject of the Owlman than anyone else. And there's a man named Jonathan Downes. He's written a book called The Owlman and Others. He's regarded as the world's leading authority on the Owlman. I wanted to go and talk with him and see what he had to say about the Owlman. What made you so interested in the Owlman phenomenon, and what made you want to write the book, The Owlman and Others?
On my 25th birthday, my ex-wife gave me a book called Mystery Animals of Britain and Ireland by a guy called Graham McEwan. And I was incredibly disappointed with it. I did read about a man called Tony Doc Shield, and I got fascinated by the work he had done concerning Morgar, the sea monster of southern Cornwall, and this thing, the Cornish Owlman. And I got mildly obsessed with the Cornish Owlman. And I was so bored and so disillusioned by McEwan's book, I thought I could do better. So I started looking into it further, and I got so involved in the whole Owlman mythos.
Some researchers have suggested that Owlman might be a real flesh and blood animal. What do you think?
That's the biggest, stupidest idea I've ever heard. There are all sorts of unknown animals left to discover in the world, but if anybody is trying to tell me that you can fit in within a zoological framework a 5-foot-tall feathered birdman that lives in a very tiny area of woodlands in southern Cornwall in the middle of a holiday area, that is nonsense.
If the eyewitness accounts are genuine, how do you think the Owlman phenomenon can be best explained?
I think some of the eyewitness accounts are genuine, I think some of them aren't. Some of them are hoaxes, some of them are hoaxes by people I know. Nearly every Owlman sighting that we have been able to track down is around a pubescent girl. The only time it was ever seen by a bloke was when he was there with his pubescent girlfriend. And I think somehow this Owlman thing is linked with it. I think Tony invented the Owlman for fun. He read John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, and thought, I want a bit of that. And he made up this mythos. And then when it started to come true, nobody was more surprised than him. He's not quite admitted it to me, but he hasn't told me I'm wrong.
It's clear from what eyewitnesses have said that encounters with Owlman are frightening, even stressful experiences. The Owlman is described more like a supernatural entity than a real animal. It's described as having powerful black pincer-like claws, red glowing eyes, and it generates an unusually high level of fear among the people who see it. You might say that Owlman sounds more like a creature from mythology, something like a demon or a devil. Could it be that this ancient place emanates some sort of psychic energy? Mawnan has a 13th century church which is surrounded by prehistoric earthwork, all of which is adjacent to an atmospheric fairy tale woodland. The twisted trees and swirling mist certainly do play tricks on the mind. And maybe some people, in particular the young or emotionally fragile, well, maybe they could believe that they're seeing things that aren't really there. Could the Owlman actually be a real flesh and blood bird, not all that different from the birds that are quite easy to see here? Well, one American researcher has proposed that Owlman might actually be an undiscovered species of giant owl that's able to remain hidden during the daytime by disguising itself as a fallen log. Unfortunately, it really isn't possible to take this idea at all seriously. England is simply too well known scientifically and too well explored for an undiscovered species of 5-foot-tall bird to remain hidden in the present day. We also have to consider the idea that virtually all of the sightings are hoaxes. Nearly all of them were first reported by the Irish magician and stage performer Tony Doc Shiels. Now, it's known that Shiels is associated with several definite monster hoaxes, including the Loch Ness Monster photographs of 1977 and the Falmouth Bay sea serpent photographs of 1976. As you might imagine, some people find the idea of a 5-foot-tall Cornish birdman rather difficult to accept. So in order to get a balanced perspective, I wanted to talk to a scientist, someone trained in critical thinking and who has a very sceptical outlook on the paranormal. I went to the University of Portsmouth to talk to Dr. David Martill. Dr. Martill is a well-known media personality. He's best known for his involvement in the television series Walking with Dinosaurs. Now, some researchers have said that Owlman can't possibly be a real animal and that it must be a paranormal manifestation of some kind. As a scientist, where do you stand on the subject of the paranormal?
Well, I doubt very much if Owlman exists. I've no reason to believe that it does. With regard to the paranormal, that's not my field of research, but in my opinion, all of the paranormal effects are to do with psychiatry and it's nothing to do with reality.
How important is it that Owlman has never been filmed or photographed?
I think the lack of evidence for Owlman, the lack of photographs, the lack of film, the lack of any tangible remains, there isn't any evidence at all that a zoologist or a paleontologist would be able to use to substantiate the claims of such a creature. Any discussions of Owlman don't lie within the realms of science, but they lie within the realms of fiction.
If the witness accounts are genuine and they're not just made up, what do you think that the Owlman could actually be?
What I would suggest is that an owlman is a particularly large bird, perhaps a raptor, perhaps even an owl such as an eagle owl, of which there are many, many that have escaped in the United Kingdom, without any sense of scale against it. You could easily be confused into thinking that it was something perhaps as large as a person.
As a scientist, what sort of evidence might convince you that Owlman actually exists?
I would want to see some really tangible remains, and I wouldn't accept, for instance, just single footprint. I would actually be happy if a feather was forthcoming, and on that feather we were able to take some cells for which we got some DNA. But if I was to be really convinced, I would want somebody to put a bullet through its head and bring me a specimen.
The case for Owlman rests entirely on anecdotal eyewitness evidence. There are no photographs, there are no pieces of film, there is no physical evidence, and virtually all of the eyewitness reports have come to us via a single dubious source. For this reason, skeptics like Dr. Martill are correct to maintain that Owlman isn't really worthy of any serious study. However, the fact remains that several eyewitnesses did independently draw the same strange Birdman-like monster, and furthermore, some of these witnesses have come forwards and insisted that their accounts were completely genuine. For these reasons, the case for Owlman remains open. It will always be associated with this place, and the people of Mawnan will continue to wonder what, if anything, lurks in their woods in the dead of night.